Hello, everyone. Well, I've just finished the last meeting of this week's long trip, the U.S.-Russian summit.
Hey, everybody. Boli Mascara here, giving you my take on this snoozer of a press conference overseas. He gave one here in the States several months ago, and now this one. He seemed to be really tired. But don't go away. This is my take from the third rope on what Biden said in his press conference without Vladimir Putin, the Russian dictator. Don't go away. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. All right. Poor Joey just seems to be tired. Seems that he didn't get enough sleep the night before, or try to carry out the job of a president of supposedly the most powerful nation in the world. Seems to be, well, ladies and gentlemen, I just finished. Dude, you were just sitting down. Your brain can't function. You gotten that tired. But, let's talk about his press conference. First, he did it by himself. Why didn't he do it with Vladimir? Joey apparently doesn't want to be confronted with tough questions. And, the sad thing about it is that if you can't work with people from other countries, especially with Putin, that you have called him a killer, okay, a dictator, and then you can't work with the Chinese dictator, the chairman for life, then what makes you think you could be an effective president or world leader? So I'm going to give you some of my take on what's going on. But first, let's go ahead and see some of the video, and then I'll give you my take. Let's go for the first one.
That unlike other countries, including Russia, we're uniquely a product of an idea. You've heard me say this before again and again, but I'm going to keep saying it. What's that idea? We don't derive our rights from the government. We possess them because we're born, period. And we yield them to a government.
Mr. President, why are you playing this game? Anybody could be born and claim rights, but we are born under the Constitution of the United States of this country, and we get our inalienable rights from a sovereign entity, which we recognize and the forefathers recognize as God. That's right, Mr. President. You are not born and just get rights, because there are a lot of people around the world that are born and they have no rights. Ask these people in Venezuela or North Korea or the former Soviet Union or in Cuba. For those who do not know what Cuba means, Cuba. Okay? And to say that we yield our rights to the government, no, we don't. We lend you the privilege. Every politician in this country, Republican, Independent, and Democrats, which I believe are demon rats, the privilege to hold office and to look for the well-being for their constituents, not to point their finger and tell us what to do. So, Mr. President, either your people are writing the wrong thing and putting it on that teleprompter, or you're reading off script, or your brain is short circuit. So let's continue with this press conference.
Of commitment and included more and more people. And I raised the case of two wrongfully imprisoned American citizens, Paul Whelan and Trevor Reed. I also raised the ability of Radio Free Europe and Radio Liberty to operate, and the importance of a free press and freedom of speech. I made it clear that we will not tolerate attempts to violate our democratic sovereignty. or destabilize our democratic elections, and we would respond.
So he says he's claiming certain things with Putin about 2 illegally held Americans in Russia. Okay, fine, he brought that up. But then he talks about not violating our democratic sovereignty and the importance of a free press and the importance of having I guess he's trying to push for an election that's not being influenced by Russian agents. But you know, Mr. President, and I'm going to say this to all your demon rats out there, you're trying to muffle free expression. And there are groups here in the United States, and I hate to say this, folks, because I probably will be banned from a certain tube. But, you know, we all know that Twitter and Facebook, they're a private institution, but they stopped anyone from saying that they were questioning the elections. I personally believe that there were things that were not done right in the elections. We'll never know unless we investigate. But I do know that Twitter and Facebook started shutting down people's accounts if they brought it up. I do know that when the New York Post started putting out reports on Joey's Hunter Biden scandal in his laptop, that they started shutting down the New York Post account on Twitter. And that's another thing. We'll talk about that in another episode. So, Mr. President, you're trying to tell Vladimir that they're not going, that we, the United States, are not going to stand for interference in the election, or that we need to maintain free press. You know, you go after free press. You don't believe me? I think Fox and Newsmax are the only conservative-orientated news organizations that the liberals constantly attack. Because they're probably bringing out things that are true. I try to get a perspective from all the news organizations, ABC, NBC, CNN, CBS, Huffington News, their online newspaper. I try to read all that so I can compare and contrast. But to say to Vladimir these things, he doesn't care. We don't have any sovereignty in this country because our sovereignty is being violated day in and day out with illegal immigration. And you, Mr. President, and your sidekick, Laughing Harris, hasn't done jack crap. All right, so let's continue looking at this press conference.
I'm pleased that you agreed today to launch a bilateral strategic stability dialogue. Diplomatic speak for saying get our military experts and our diplomats together to work on a mechanism that can lead to control of new and dangerous and sophisticated weapons that are coming on the scene now, that reduce the times of response, that raise the prospects of accidental war. And we went into some detail of what those weapon systems were. Another area we spent a great deal of time on was cyber and cybersecurity. I talked about the proposition that certain critical infrastructure should be off limits to attack, period, by cyber or any other means. I gave them a list. If I'm not mistaken, I don't have it in front of me, 16 specific entities, 16 defined as critical infrastructure under U.S. policy, from the energy sector to our water systems. Of course, the principle is one thing. It has to be backed up by practice.
So good old Joey gives a list to Vladimir to not attack. You know, Mr. President, I know you've never been in the military. I know your late son has, and his service is greatly appreciated. But you, Mr. President, you've never been in the military. Your military folks are going to tell you nothing is off limits when it comes to incapacitating your enemy. And that includes cyber attack. If you don't believe me, why do we have a cyber command in San Antonio, Texas? And the Army and the Navy and the Air Force and the Marine Corps all have cyber warriors. Why? Because they know we can't be attacked, and we are being attacked by the North Koreans, by the Chinese, and by the Russians. And who knows what other countries are going after this, but those are the top three right now. I'm going to tell you right now. It's a fact, Jack. There was a report several years ago that in China, and I think it was in Shanghai that I read, that there was a 4-story building packed with Chinese government employees and military personnel. All 4 floors were packed with hackers and people attacking not only targets such as industry, but also United States government agencies. So you think Vladimir is just going to say, well, yeah, we're going to agree to this, not to attack this. Besides, there are other groups within these countries that are going to attack us no matter what. They did it against a oil company, and they did it against a meat packing company. What makes you think they want to attack other entities here in the United States? We just got to get our act together, folks. Our commands in the military have to work hand in hand with private companies to implement much stronger defense and learn how to adapt to these things and be able to counteract these attacks. So don't be so naive that you think Vladimir is going to follow or listen to or look at your list. I know what he's probably going to use it for: toilet paper. Okay, let's keep going with this press conference.
I'll take your questions, and as usual, folks, they gave me a list of the people I'm going to call on. So, Jonathan, Associated Press.
So there you have it, folks. It's not surprising, but he just said it. As usual, I got a list of reporters I'm going to be calling on. Mr. President, don't you have the damn brass ones or the cojones to call on any one of the reporters that are there? You have to have a list. Are your aides giving you a list? No. That's a stupid question to ask. I know his aides are giving him a list of reporters that apparently don't ask hard questions. As usual, I have a list of the people I'm going to be calling. Ladies and gentlemen, he actually told you that they're just going to be calling on certain reporters. And then he gets pissed off when a reporter shouts out a question or gets upset. Somebody who's not on the list, apparently, and he's not ready to answer. Apparently, these reporters are the easy reporters that they can work with. That gives you pause to think. Are these people working with the aides of the president, the White House, and giving them a list of questions they're going to ask the president, and they might have an answer to those questions beforehand? The press should be questioning this, and I know there are probably some already that are seeing something that's just awfully wrong here. All right, let's keep looking at his press conference.
Government. And I think that's the choice that was made. I think I'm not going to second guess whether it could have been fundamentally different, but I do think it does not lend itself to Russia maintaining itself as one of the great powers in the world.
Thank you, sir. Did military response ever come up in this conversation today? Did you, in terms of the red lines that you laid down, is military response an option for a ransomware attack? And President Putin had called you in his press conference an experienced person. You famously told him he didn't have a soul. Do you now have a deeper understanding of him after this meeting?
Thank you very much.
But on the military response, sir?
No, we didn't talk about military response.
This last clip you saw of a reporter asking, what would we do if we had another cyber attack carried out against the United States, where military action will be an option? Legitimate question, Mr. President. And you know what he does? He just looks at it and says, thank you. Mr. President, if you're truly the President of the United States, what is so freaking hard about answering a question like that? I don't know what else to say. I don't know what else to ask. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the President of the United States. He could have just said, well, we could look at options. Military action is just not one thing. We don't want to use an atomic bomb to destroy a mosquito. That's just an analogy. Okay? He could have just looked at options in his head at the time and say, hey, you know, there's different ways to deal with a cyber attack. But he couldn't even answer that. All right, let's keep looking at this press conference.
But on the military response, sir?
No, we didn't talk about military response.
In the spirit, Mr. President, of you saying that there is no substitute for face-to-face dialogue, and also with what you said at NATO, that the biggest problems right now are Russia and China. You've spoken many times about how you have spent perhaps more time with President Xi than any other world leader. So is there going to become a time where you might call him, old friend to old friend, and ask him to open up China to the World Health Organization investigators who are trying to get to the bottom of COVID-19?
Let's get something straight. We know each other well. We're not old friends. It's just pure business.
So I guess my question would be, you've said that you were going to press China. You signed on to the G7 communique that said the G7 were calling on China to open up to let the investigators in. But China basically says they don't want to be interfered with anymore. So what happens now?
The impact, the world's attitude toward China as it develops. China's trying very hard to project itself as a responsible and very, very forthcoming nation. That they are trying very hard to talk about how they're taking and helping the world in terms of COVID-19 and vaccines, and they're trying very hard. Look, certain things you don't have to explain to the people of the world. They see the results. Is China really actually trying to get to the bottom of this? One thing we did discuss, as I told you, in the EU and at the G7 and with NATO, what we should be doing, and what I'm going to make an effort to do, is rally the world to work on what is going to be the physical mechanism available to detect early on the next pandemic and have a mechanism by which we can respond to it and respond to it early.
You see, folks, this man can't even answer the questions, I guess, of reporters that are not on this pre-constructed list. He didn't answer this reporter from Fox News question. And then he said, let's get one thing straight. We're not friends. It's just business. Well, what type of business are you talking about, Joey? Is it the business of your son who went with you to China when you were vice president on Air Force Two and got millions and millions of dollar contract from Chinese nationals and probably officials from the Chinese government? Is it the business of your son? Huh? The one where he got over $100,000 shopping spree? Is it that business, Mr. President? Bull hockey. Bull hockey. You know, and then you try to blow off this reporter like nothing. You never answer his freaking questions to try to get to the bottom of the origin of COVID. The virus that has killed millions of people around the world. But we're going to be talking about that later on, because right now there is a report out there from a online reporting group, I guess. I don't know what it is. I just read it real fast, but I want to read it really in depth so I can get to the bottom of it and report it and at least give you some information. But it's something called Red State. And they report that a high official from the Chinese government has defected to the United States. He came here on the pretext that he was going to visit his daughter who was studying here in the United States back in February. And he came with terabytes of information on how the Chinese government created this virus. In other words, screwed around with it to make it a bioweapon. Interesting. And he turned himself into the Defense Intelligence Agency. But we're going to be talking about that later on. No, he wants to talk about putting in place physical mechanisms to detect and deal with the next pandemic. Hey, folks, you can't deal with it if you don't understand where this one we're dealing with now came from. We all know the truth, folks. We know the Chinese screwed around with a virus and it escaped, or it was put out. I don't know. We're going to be talking about that in my next discussion. So now let's look at this last clip about how he treats a reporter from CNN, folks. Look for yourself.
The families of the detained Americans came up and we discussed it. We're going to follow through with that discussion. I am not going to walk away on that issue.
Why are you so confident he'll change his behavior, Mr. President?
Yeah, I'm not confident in changing behavior. What do you do all the time?
So
when did I say I was confident?
You said in the next 6 months you'll be able to determine.
What I said was, let's get it straight. I said what will change their behavior is if the rest of the world reacts to them and it diminishes their standing in the world. I'm not confident of anything. I'm just stating the fact.
But given his past behavior has not changed, and in that press conference after sitting down with you for several hours, he denied any involvement in cyber attacks. He downplayed human rights abuses. He even refused to say Alexei Navalny's name. So how does that account to a constructive meeting as President Putin?
You don't understand that. You're in your own business.
Is the summit with China?
You see, this guy goes off. He blew a gasket. His blood pressure probably went up. Calm down, Joey. Calm down. But see, this is what happens when a reporter that's not on the list shuts out real questions, not softball questions, like the reporters on the list that you usually get. She asks you legitimate questions. What makes you feel confident that Vladimir is going to change? And then he goes, oh, I never said that. I never said that. No, she just asked you a question. What makes you feel he might change? What makes you feel that he's going to listen to what we ask him not to do from that list that you gave him? And then he tells her, you're in the wrong business if you don't know what the hell I'm talking about, basically. See, this is Joey, and this is not the first time he goes off on people. Folks, 5 months. This is just 5 months in the White House. And this guy just can't seem to handle it. We got a president that seems to have problems up here. His wife has to call him to follow her. And we got a vice president who was put in charge of the border. And it's been over 80 days and she hasn't done jack crap. All right, this is it, folks. A press conference that was a snoozer. And whatever you said, it didn't really accomplish crap. Okay, this is it. Stay tuned. If you like my take on what's going on, subscribe, give me a rumble, hit the bell. I'll be on both platforms. This is Fully Mascara telling you hasta la vista, baby.